Thank you very much for this really impressive account. So moving over, we have about 10 minutes for questions. You've seen a very interesting sort of activity here in the chat with, questions that are pointing out maybe to 4 different sort of classes, like maybe we cannot answer all of them. I'm going to give one to each of you. You say whether you want to take it or not. Maybe if I'm going to move to Bardhyl to start off with again, is that the question about how does, for example, social media activism in a way, how does it coexist next to established civil society movements? Is this something, is it parallel? Should it be part of it? Is it separate? Is that something that you'd like to answer?
So if I understood correctly, the question is about how civil society organization and civic activism correlate?
Yeah, especially in social media, yeah. Like
in social,
yeah.
I think that civic activism can be on an individual basis. It can be the work of civil society organization. But what is the most important part is that they have to be a cause to fight about, and this cause should be of public interest in order to mobilize and engage more people. And the part within the social media can be used, I don't know, to convey the message, to mobilize like-minded people, to raise awareness, and to make people care or to understand an issue. And then we can transform all of this into concrete actions and demand for change. And we do this, it's not something that can be done only online. It must be then transformed in very concrete action. It can be done, of course, through protests, through various types and forms of activism, but at the end, there must be a very concrete answer or solution to the concern of common public interest. And it is usually related to government action. That's why activism, social media, but must be used in order to really be concrete and precise in identifying who is the relevant institution with the mandate to act, and then put pressure. This is the brief answer.
This is an excellent answer. Thanks so much for it. We might let's see how we're doing on time later on, whether we can give you another question. Mariana, the question I would have selected for you also because of your legal background is that, there's this whole question about the regulatory environment. What can we do? What can we not do? Can we be self-regulatory? Who should be have the regulatory power in the field of social media activism? What's your opinion on this?
Well, this is a very difficult question for me, because it is not easy to establish if this should or not be or should not be regulated, because it has flourished also because it is a unregulated way, as my co-panelists were saying before. It was one of the free spaces where a person can actually speak freely, tell their minds, and do what actually comes naturally, and and feels maybe safer than in other spaces where censorship is established, or where the regulation actually constrains and puts limits. So I do believe it with thinking about how disinformation, how also social media can actually have very negative impacts. We have to come as human society to an equilibrium, which is very difficult to achieve, but we do have to come to an equilibrium of how we can establish a more sound way of giving information, and that this becomes a positive space, and that it actually isn't a way to actually create so much negativity or conflict or violence. But I think the main thing that we could do is not regulate and censorship, but more to educate and more to give tools on how to give good information, real information, how to actually, or that is technology in the digital forum, in a positive and constructive ways. So I do not think that regulation per se is the way. I think what has to be done is actually educating citizens to actually use this space and to actually also read and eat up all this information with some focused lenses and with a little bit more than just forwarding everything you get or just putting out there things that actually could have a very negative impact. So I think it is finding that equilibrium.
Mariana, super, thank you. And I think this might be discussed later on in the workshop as well. So very valuable and, stimulation to think a little bit further about it. Robic, when I move over to you, so you come from, being just in inverted comma, a normal guy to become, social media activist. And, the question about power, what gives this power? What are your tools of power for change? Is something that came up quite a number of times in the chat. Maybe the other colleagues also would like to answer on it, but I'd be really interested in what you have to say about it.
So actually, social media for me was a sphere, was a universe in which everyone has an equal voice and everyone has an equal power. So it all depends on how you choose to use it, actually. So also, like, we don't call ourselves as like the messiahs of some sort, but we did what we thought was a right step to do, to be the voice of the voiceless, because we enjoy, in a way, a kind of privilege to know what's happening in the world, what's right, what's wrong, in terms of the health guideline, health safety measures, or also in terms of, like, just for example, what I would like to share is we all saw the news, saw the images of the migrant workers from Kathmandu or from the city centers having to walk back to their villages because of the lockdown, and the government was not doing anything about it. And we just even my parents, when they were seeing the images, the videos of, like, women carrying the babies back to the villages, which is like 500 kilometers, which would take weeks to reach. So that was very moving. But like, my parents would say, what can we do about it? So that's the question that might have moved me. So come on, I just took a step back and say, maybe even if I can't do anything about it, maybe I can raise a voice, and my voice could resonate with other voices. So I think social media gives us such a sphere, such a universe where you can connect with like-minded people and, like, create a movement. So we didn't actually, frankly, we didn't expect this enough is enough movement to go this big actually. So we just planned to have first protest outside the Prime Minister's residence with our placards and stuff. So we were like 20 people to start off with, and for the first protests, we were expecting around like 100 people max, but there were like 300 to 500 people who joined in there. So it grew bigger and bigger. So we kind of realized that we were not only the ones who were thinking the way that I was thinking. So there were other people. So we actually could do something about it. So that's how we started this movement.
So Robic, it's also the belief in, being able to be the change, in a sense, to initiate change. That's beautiful. So this brings us to a nice closing, because we had now 3 quite contrasting perspectives. But on the same time, all individuals who very strongly believe in the field of, social transformation, through the digital space, giving people power, in a sense, people a voice, And I would like to thank you all into all these different corners of this world for your great inputs and for your sharing.